One of the many exciting things about joining Liv was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed, right? Been able to play events in Spain.
Here in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta, it's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50 years old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Liv.
1, 2, 3, 2, 1.
I feel like when there's this wind in this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
OMG, what did we just witness? Our first ever double playoff in Liv Golf history. I am so pumped up right now.
So much happened on the last 5 minutes. I mean, it looked like it was going to the Crushers and Annie Barton winning, and all of a sudden then Abraham holding a chip, David Puig birdie eight, then that little putt from Annie Barton on the last. I mean, it was great watching.
You know, it's really amazing to be able to do it in your home country, in front of my family, in front of so many friends, and on my favorite golf course. So it's obviously super nice.
Welcome back to our college football today summer special. He is the mastermind of the CFP Pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Again, with all the changes that we are seeing in the 2024 college football campaign, one of the biggest is conference realignment, which means there is no longer a Power 5. The Pac-12 says goodbye. It is just a Power 4. We started with the Big Ten and the SEC, but do not overlook either the Big 12 or the ACC. And Joe, I think from a betting perspective, the Big 12 stands out to me the most. First, the realignment, the new teams that enter the fold. The four corner schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, now joining the Big 12 conference. But this league is stacked, or at least stacked in a competitive way. 8 teams with a 12-1 price to win the conference crown. That is half of the 16 schools now in this conference, by far the most at that number or shorter to win a conference championship this year, and all separated by less than $9. And it starts with Utah, the newcomer, but the betting favorites to win the Big 12 title at a plus 310 price.
And Cam Rising, their star quarterback, does return. How does he return from the ACL injury that he sustained about a year and a half ago? That will really tell how successful Utah is, because from an offensive perspective, Ben, only 15 touchdowns through the air, 11 interceptions. As a team, they only threw for 1,550 yards. They were one-dimensional in multiple ball games, and that put their defense in terms of a disadvantage. So Cam Rising is the key to this offense this year. Again, there's a lot of pressure on Kyle Whittingham. On paper, they look like the most physical and most complete team, but this conference could be the most competitive throughout the Power Four this year.
And the odds ever changing, of course, here in the offseason, plus 310, plus 290, around $3, wherever you get the number. And that's the big thing for the Utah Utes in making this move to the Big 12. The retention of Cam Rising, the fact that he is staying in college football. Tore his ACL, the knee injury against Penn State in the 2023 Rose Bowl. That was 2 Januaries ago. It is almost going to be 18 calendar months since we have seen Cam Rising take his last college football snap but he is back as the quarterback for the Utes. I mentioned Avery Johnson and K-State, second best price to win the Big 12 title. If Kyle Whittingham is consistency as one of the longest tenured head coaches in college football, Chris Kleiman is starting to build that in the Little Apple in Manhattan, Kansas. A lot to like this year with Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, and a stout rushing attack that is featured with a good defense as well.
Absolutely, and you look at Avery Johnson, he abused the Texas Tech Red Raiders for multiple touchdown runs in terms of that victory last season. If he can elevate in terms of the passing attack, take over for where Will Howard was, and even produce better, they're going to be right there. Chris Kleiman, much like Dan Lanning, it coaches it from the inside out. They're very physical in terms of the defensive front seven, only allowed basically less than 25 points per game over the last month and a half of the regular season. Again, a very physical team that likes to run it. As they run it, they win ball games. So we'll see how this plays out. They deserve to be there right there in regards to number 2 overall. Yeah. But keep an eye out for Matt Campbell and Iowa State. No, they're lurking in the background with Rocco Beck. They lost the bowl game, but this team has a bunch of returning starters along with Oklahoma State.
85% of the returning production from a season ago is back in Ames. That is the most at the Power Conference level. That is the most in all of FBS college football across the entirety of the country. Rocco Beck, because of the gambling situation with Hunter Deckers entering last year for Iowa State, was thrust into that position, but learned from it and gained invaluable experience. His 2 top targets are back for Iowa State's offense as well. His entire offensive line returns. So much returning production. I love the Cyclones to go over 7.5. And Joe, if I think Iowa State can go over 7.5, to speak to the competitive balance of the Big 12, you see those 8 teams that we listed at a 12-1 price or shorter. That includes Central Florida. That's half the league. UCF's win total is 7.5, and the juice is pretty evenly distributed. It means the ceiling in this conference might not be all that high, but the floor not all that low either.
No, and think about the quarterback play in this conference. Potentially, they have the most dynamic quarterbacks maybe from top to bottom. You got KJ Jefferson that transfers in from UCF. Garrett Green that came on for West Virginia. Jalen Daniels returns for Kansas. We saw and talked about Cam Rising and Avery Johnson. I mean, Brennan Morton for Texas Tech. I mean, Noah Fafita. I mean, the list goes on and on in regards to the depth at the quarterback position, and that's why I think there's a number of teams that could come out in regards to a Big 12 championship. I love the job that Joey McGuire has done in terms of a culture perspective in Lubbock. Right now, their win total 7.5. He returns 18 starters as well. Taj Brooks, one of the most productive rushing leaders in all FBS, comes back. He can run it. He can catch it. And that defense showed that they were physical, won back-to-back bowl games. If they could start fast, keep an eye out for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders this year.
West Virginia and Kansas both won 9 games with a bowl victory a season ago. The Mountaineers' win total is 6.5. The over has the juice. Kansas, not basketball. Kansas football in Lawrence has the 3rd best price to win the Big 12 championship this season, entering this year. It speaks to what Lance Leipold, the program builder, has built for KU. 9 victories a season ago, and that was in large part without maybe one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in all of the Big 12, in all of the country, Jalen Daniels, who should be healthy this year. No Frosted Flakes commercials for you, Jalen Daniels, this offseason. And, of course, with the newcomers into the Big 12, we have to highlight Colorado. Prime era year 2 in Boulder. CU off to an illustrious start at the beginning of last season. 4 wins by the time September was done, over their preseason win total of 3.5. Immediate improvement from a 1-win season the year prior to Deion Sanders taking the reins in Boulder. But from that point on, not many more wins. In fact, no more wins for Colorado, a 4-8 record. 5.5 the win total for the Buffs entering 2024. Things are a little bit different in terms of the scale and everything that follows Coach Prime, and that's the notoriety that he wants and Colorado, frankly, deserves. But what does it mean from a success perspective? What does success look like this season for CU?
6-6 bowl eligibility. That's what it has to be. And Dion did a fantastic job in year one. Started right from the get-go, 20.5-point underdog, knockout TCU. Offensive line needs to get better. Shedeur Sanders hit multiple times and sacked 50-plus times last year. They could not run it, dead last in FBS, averaging 68 rushing yards per game. If they could have that type of success, more offensive balance, that'll lead to 6 or potential 7 wins, and that is success in year number 2.
When you look at the Heisman Trophy odds, Shedeur Sanders is a little bit down the list at 40-1. You could keep going to the dynamic playmaker who does it all in Travis Hunter at 65-1 as well. Both have legitimate shots in being in the Heisman Trophy conversation throughout the 2024 college football campaign. Colorado will be on center stage week number 1, a primetime game for Coach Prime. The Thursday night before the first full Saturday against FCS powerhouse North Dakota State. It is less than a 2-score spread. Frankly, I can't believe Colorado scheduled the game, but we'll see what happens. Followed by a trip to Lincoln the following Saturday in week number 2 against what we both expect to be an improved Nebraska Cornhuskers football program. Deion Sanders has built his program through the transfer portal. Transfers out, transfers in. They are hoping for the talent to gel together quickly this year in Boulder. We both like UCF's win total, by the way, at 7.5. Oklahoma State, what's their outlook after reaching the Big 12 title game last year?
I think they could be a 9-win football team. Defense has to get much better. They weren't physical, got worn down by Texas in regards to the championship game, but they can run it. Ollie Gordon comes back, 100-1 shot to win the Heisman. Run it, Ollie!
The nation's leading rusher from a season ago, OG2, Ollie Gordon II, is back in college football. Big 12, ACC, that's where we go up next, live right here on CFT.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Will they both make it? Yes. But it has more to do with the fact of the 3 teams that are not really good at all in Dallas, Washington, and the Sparks, and an Atlanta Dream Team without Ryan Howard that's spiraling out of control. If they can get those 2 teams, Indiana and Chicago, that's going to be a major boom for ratings.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
DeMar DeRozan now joins that team in Sacramento with the Kings. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, Devin Carter, who they drafted early, Keegan Murray as well. A Kings team, DRS, that has been a playoff contender.
Is it going to equate to a championship? Probably not, but that's not the goal. Make your team better every offseason. The Kings definitely got better with that move here, Ben.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on College Football Today Summer Special. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. We now turn our attention to the ACC. Some insight and analysis to get you ready for a new year within the Atlantic Coast Conference. Of course, we have seen conference realignment at all of the power conference leagues. That includes the ACC, the Atlantic Seaboard, and the Pacific Seaboard up in Northern California. Cal in Stanford joined the ACC, as well as a team from the Lone Star State out of Dallas. It is SMU after an 11-win season and an AAC conference championship and its final year in that league. But, Joe, when you look at the ACC title odds, you start at the top. And, frankly, it is a tier of 3 from the odds maker's perspective. Of course, after the disappointing result at the end of a perfect and undefeated 13-0 run to an ACC championship, Florida State was left out of the college football playoff in the final year of 4, hoping to be there in the first year of 12 teams. Plus 270 on the Noles in front of Clemson, the Tigers 4-1. And then in the tier of 3, all teams separated by just over $1.50, the Miami Hurricanes at plus 440. Do you think there is a clear distinction between these 3 teams and the rest of the conference?
Well, I think there's a clear distinction between the top 2 teams and then the third team, which is based strictly, in my opinion, based off optimism in Mario Cristobal in South Beach with their new quarterback Cam Ward and Damian Martinez. So, yes, I do think there is separation. Personally, I would have Jeff Brom and Louisville slightly ahead of the Miami Hurricanes, even though they move on from Jack Plummer to Tyler Shuck. Doesn't matter. Louisville knocked off Miami in their house last year as a 1-point favorite, and Jeff Brom proved he can get to an ACC championship. So we'll see how this season plays out. I think it is intriguing. I think we could see 2 teams from this potential conference step up. Schedule is light, but I like the chances of both the Noles and Tigers respectively.
So as you look at the top 15 prices to win a national championship, only 3 schools are not from either the Big Ten or the SEC. Listen, it's a new era. It's the 12-team college football playoff. Notre Dame, who is not in a league independent. We'll talk about the independents in the group of 5 in just a little bit. But also 2 teams out of the ACC, Florida State and Clemson. We'll get to the Tigers in a moment. First, we start with the Noles. Joe, in December, they were the focus of the entire country in college football. Again, one of 15 undefeated Power 5 conference champions in the 10-year history of the 4-team format of the college football playoff. And the only of those 15 schools to be an undefeated Power 5 champ to not reach the college football playoff. And then a lot of people pointed at the Orange Bowl, where Florida State had a ton of players opt out. They legitimately lost by 60 against the Georgia Bulldogs. That's not hyperbole. It was a 60-point difference, and said, see, FSU, you didn't really deserve it. But that's not what we give. It's not recognition for what you have done in a bowl game that rewards your regular season and conference championship success. But I digress. One of the reasons, Joe, they struggled so much against Georgia in the bowl game in the Orange Bowl is because of all the opt-outs. And I think most importantly, the opt-outs that weren't there for the bowl game was because everybody was preparing to take a step to the next level. Jordan Travis, when you look at Travis Benson and everybody that Trey Benson, and everybody that they had, Jared Verse on the other side of the football, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, so much talent now in the National Football League, but a familiar name within this conference takes the reins at the quarterback position. DJ Uiagalelei, after 2 years at Oregon State, or a season at Oregon State, back in the ACC after starting his career at Clemson. What is your expectation for Florida State this year?
I think they're going to win the ACC, and I think Mike Norvell has done a fantastic job. I was critical of them a couple of years ago, but he rebounded in a big way in back-to-back seasons, and it wasn't just offensively, Ben. It's what they've been able to do from a defensive perspective. We've talked about it on the radio side in terms of top 10, top 25 talent from the NFL position. 2 years ago, it was Jermaine Johnson. Last year, this year, it was Jared Fisk and Jared Verse that stepped up in regards to being drafted first couple of rounds. They have done a fantastic job in terms of the interior line play, and that's why I think they'll be there. One of the best secondaries in regards to FBS, only giving up 179 passing yards to opposing offenses. They rushed for 32 touchdowns on the ground, and DJU, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, over over 3,100 passing yards last year. As long as he doesn't turn the football over, he brings veteran experience within the conference. I'm banking on the Seminoles to be an 11 or a 12-win football team.
To me, they're the bet within the ACC at plus 270. Clemson, Joe, went on a streak where they won 6 consecutive ACC championships entering 2021, and they made the college football playoff each and every year. Down year in 2021, bounced back with an ACC title in 2022, make that 7 of 8. Last year, one of the worst under Dabo Swinney. 4 ACC losses. How do you expect Clemson to bounce back?
Well, in a big way. It's got to be Cade Klubnik. Last year, inconsistent, 19 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Go back to that game in Death Valley against Florida State. He held the football too long. That was a 14-point turnaround that allowed the Seminoles to win it in Death Valley in overtime. You look at the stats, 74-7 prior to last year, Clemson was against ACC opponents. They lost 4 games, started right from week 1 where they lost as a double-digit favorite on the road to Duke. They need to step up in a big way. Yeah. But again, the schedule starts fast. They have to give their best effort against the top-ranked Georgia Bulldogs, 13.5-point dog already. They're playing with house money. If somehow, some way, Ben, they could strike the upset, they're a legitimate top 10 team automatically, and then their college football playoff odds go from plus 205 to probably negative.
13.5-point dog in the opener against the Dogs. The first time Clemson had more than 2 conference losses in ACC play a season ago since 2010. That was year number 2 under Dabo Swinney. Quickly here, Joe. Yep. Miami, big chest, Mario Cristobal. There is a thought from an optimistic odds perspective that Miami this year, in year 3 under Cristobal, can recreate the success of Sark last year in year 3 in Austin, but I take it you're not buying.
I'm not buying yet. We saw this with De'Ara King a couple years ago. Cam Ward is a legitimate playmaker, over 3,000 yards, leading Washington State 2 years ago to a bowl game. But again, it's the consistency on the defensive side of the ball, not physical, and that falls on Mario Cristobal. Yeah. I need to see it before I believe it.
Just 6-7 in his 2 years as the head coach in South Florida. 2 teams to keep an eye on within the ACC, Louisville, like Joe mentioned, and Virginia Tech, the most returning starters at the power conference level in all of college football. Some big plus money on the other side of the break in the Heisman Trophy race. Up next.
The WNBA is a unique market, right? It moves a little bit different. You take a bet, a limit play, even if the limit is 2 dimes on a side, you don't go from 11.5 to 12. You know what I mean? You got to go. Because if they bet you the second number, then you go, oh boy, now we have a decision that we really didn't think we got a big decision. Books love decisions.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Watch out for USA and Canada in 4 years. Like cricket's going to be a sport that's growing.
I made my first cricket bet last week or over the weekend. I was getting a team that was leading like 150 to 5 plus odds. I'm like, I'm up 150 points and I'm getting plus odds. Where do I sign? I love this cricket stuff. What are you kidding me?
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
DeMar DeRozan now joins that team in Sacramento with the Kings. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, Devin Carter, who they drafted early, Keegan Murray as well. A Kings team, DRS, that has been a playoff contender.
Is it going to equate to a championship? Probably not. That's not the goal. Make your team better every offseason. The Kings definitely got better with that move here, Ben.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Let's give you some big plus money. It's one of our favorite things to do on a week-to-week basis on college football today. And oftentimes, Joe, it's a big money line underdog that we think might be able to keep a game close, cover a number, and if they do so, pull off a large upset. But here we are in the preseason. It's the summer, so we look at the Heisman Trophy race. Where do we do that? In the vault. It is time for Go for the Loot. I'm not used to doing that.
I was just going to say.
It's a little bit strange.
We're missing our third wheel there. What happened?
He'll be here.
In memory, he's with us.
Always.
In spirit.
Always in spirit. Kevin Walsh will be here throughout the entirety of the college football season. So we're looking at those big plus money prices. And before we name the actual guys that we think will be involved in the Heisman Trophy race, it is also fair to say Carson Beck is the favorite at plus 750. It's not a minus money favorite. It's not less than a $5 favorite. It's certainly not less than a plus 250 favorite. So all of these prices are long shots. But oftentimes the preseason Heisman Trophy favorites are not the guys there the second weekend in December in Manhattan trying to strike the pose. So these long shot prices are all long shot prices. Lisi, who is a player in college football you would like to highlight?
I'm going to go to Donovan Edwards, and we talk about being able to pound the rock in Michigan. He's 100 to 1 shot. And big game Donovan got me the victory in the national championship game. 2 tutties at 10 to 1, baby. We're going to continue that momentum. He is the go-to guy, only 497 rushing yards last year, but he is a big play threat that could take it from point A to point B. I talked about Sharon Moore in the 2 games that he coached. They rushed it for 84 times, 42 per game in both of those wins over Maryland and Penn State, especially with the lack of success at the quarterback position. Jack Tuttle, Alex Orji will be battling it out in terms of fall camp. We don't know what to expect in regards to that. I expect Michigan to run the football early and often. And let's not forget, last 3 regular seasons, every time Michigan pounds the rock for over 200, they're undefeated as well. It starts week number 2 against Texas. If big game Donovan pounds it for over 200 and multiple touchdowns, give me the money, baby. I'll take the 100 to 1 shot.
And big game Donovan Edwards was there at the end of the 2022 college football season, taking over for the injured Blake Corum, rushing for nearly 200, maybe even over that against Purdue in the Big Ten title game. So we expected, even with the return of Blake Corum last year to Ann Arbor, for Donovan Edwards to be there once again. The regular season production, not illustrious, but what he did in that national title game and the plus money he has already cashed for Joe Lisi, why not a 100 to 1 shot as well? Of course, the last running back to win a Heisman Trophy, Derrick Henry, back in 2015, the very first year of the college football playoff era, or the second year of it, excuse me. So as we go around the country, here's a guy that I've already highlighted, but would also like to add into the fold once again. Avery Johnson, the quarterback for Kansas State. We'll focus on the player to begin. 8 games last year as a true freshman. 5 touchdowns, 7 more rushing scores. Because of his emergence as the guy who was taking over for the program and Will Howard's departure to Ohio State, he is that quarterback, one of the best within the Big 12. There is what he can do as a dynamic athlete. There is what he put up in K-State's victory over NC State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, a bowl game that swept the nation, of which Avery Johnson ate the live mascot as the Pop-Tart Bowl MVP. It is going to be a bit entering this year. We have never not seen the winner of the Pop-Tart Bowl MVP award win the Heisman Trophy the following season. But in further talking points, Joe, it's also because of the college football playoff. I have mentioned it. In the 10-year history of the 4-team format of the CFP, 7 of the 10 guys at least reached the conference championship games and led their team to a college football playoff appearance. Because there are more spots open to reach the CFP, and K-State has the second best price to win the Big 12 and try to earn one of those automatic berths as the 5 highest ranked conference champs, I think Avery Johnson and many others from the power conference level have a great shot of striking the pose and striking a huge plus money ticket cashing.
That's a great look. He had 7 rushing touchdowns in 7 games, and he stepped up 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. You don't turn the football over, and you lead your team dream to wins, especially against top 25 competition, you're going to have an opportunity to be sitting in New York, and that's all you want, Ben. Give me a seat at the party. As this season progresses, Avery Johnson could put up huge numbers in the Big 12.
It is now his show in the Little Apple in Manhattan. K-State, second best price again at plus 350 to win the Big 12. We'll talk about the college football playoff and the reminders that you need to know in the expanded 12-team era up next. And if the non-power conference teams now have a seat at the table, we'll do that here on CFT.
One of the many exciting things about joining Live was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed, right? I've been able to play events in Spain.
Here in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta, it's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50 years old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Live.
1, 2, 3, 2, 1.
I feel like when there's this wind, this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
OMG, what did we just witness? Our first ever double playoff in Live Golf history. I am so pumped up right now.
So much happened on the last 5 minutes. I mean, it looked like it was going to the crushers and Annie Barton winning, and all of a sudden then Abraham holding a chip, David Pooch birdie, then that little putt from Annie Barton on the last. I mean, it was great watching.
You know, it's really amazing to be able to do it in your home country, in front of my family, in front of so many friends, and on my favorite golf course. So it's obviously super nice.
In the new 12-team format of the college football playoff, here is how the field breaks down. 5 automatic berths for the 5 highest-ranked conference champions and 7 at-large bids. Theoretically, it could just be the 5 highest-ranked conference title winners. That could be a team from the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, the MAC, and the Sun Belt. Often how it works, though, is we give credence to the Power 4 conferences, the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, and ACC. Those 4 conference champions will be ranked higher than anybody from the group of 5. But that does allow a spot for the 5th highest ranked conference champ from the non-power conference level. We will debate what that looks like in the 12-team CFP era. And, of course, at stake, one of those at-large bids potentially for Notre Dame. Again, there are just 7 teams nationally that have a minus money price favored to reach the college football playoff in its first year of 12 in 2024. And Notre Dame is one of those 7 teams, Joe, at minus 170. The win total for the Fighting Irish, 10.5, and the under has the juice at minus 170. An indication that if Notre Dame can at least get to 10 wins, the Fighting Irish will be in the college football playoff. Is the path that crystal crystal clear for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame.
I think it is, and it starts with the quarterback position. Riley Leonard taking over for Sam Hartman. We talked about Riley Leonard being a dual-threat quarterback. He stepped up in Duke, was hurt towards the end of the regular season, but he is an added dimension in regards to the offense for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Notre Dame averaged well over 170 rushing yards per game. Audric Estime moves on to the NFL, but you have 4 starters coming back on the offensive line, and we saw them win 10 ball games last year, including the bowl game. So again, there is the potential. Starts week 1 against Texas A&M. Schedule is a little bit light, Ben, so I don't see any way for Notre Dame is not a 10-win football team. 11 wins, I think, is the top. They're going to have maybe 1 loss throughout the regular season, but everything is there for the taking for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame.
And here is the debate around the Irish in the 12-team format of the college football playoff. Because Notre Dame is an independent FBS football program and does not belong to a conference, they will never earn an automatic berth to the college football playoff. The top 4, the 4 highest-ranked conference champs, all earn an opening round bye. Notre Dame will never have the opportunity, at least in this format, by these rules, to earn an opening round bye in the CFP. What Notre Dame can do is can host a college football playoff game on campus under the watchful eye of Touchdown Jesus in South Bend as one of the top 5 to 8 seeds in the college football playoff. But that's the distinction. In my estimation, Joe, I think this makes things easier for Notre Dame. You might be saying, well, they'll never get the automatic berth, and they'll never get to get the bye in the opening round to help their chances, you would think, of winning a national title. But Notre Dame had all of these same questions in a 4-team format. They had to be nearly perfect, a razor-thin edge each and every season. Now there's 7 spots for Notre Dame to occupy, and the odds makers agree. Again, why it is minus 170. That's the expectation this season in South Bend.
It is, and they want the eyes on the product. If it comes down to a 10-2 Notre Dame team, and let's just say an 11-1 Memphis team or Liberty that's not a conference champion, I think the committee would take Notre Dame in a heartbeat over both of those teams. So that's where you get the added benefit for Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman. They have the cachet. They have the tradition and pageantry that other teams don't have, right? Team and the fan bases want to see Notre Dame in terms of the college football playoff. So that's where you get the value in terms of the minus 170 to make it this year again. But they have to step up. They thought Sam Hartman was the answer last year. They specifically got Sam Hartman to win that game against Ryan Day in Ohio State. They had him for 58 minutes and 59 minutes and 30 seconds. Couldn't put him away last year.
In the first 2 years under Marcus Freeman, the Irish have won 9 and 10 games by the end of the season, but both of those years featured a bowl victory. They have not gone over the 10.5 win total, which is a regular season win total in either of his 2 years at the command in South Bend. Oftentimes, because of their independent status, Notre Dame plays a very difficult schedule. They have a scheduling alliance with the ACC. They play 5 ACC teams each and every year. Sometimes that can be Clemson or Florida State or Miami. Insert who you would like into that conversation. And then, of course, they're non-conference, and everything is a non-conference, but those other teams outside of the ACC are often quite grueling. USC in years past, Michigan, so on and so forth. This year, you look at the schedule for the Irish, it is not overly difficult in comparison. They do have Florida State, but that game is at home in South Bend. They open up the year on the road in College Station, where Riley Leonard, the former Duke quarterback, will play his former head coach, the former Duke head coach, who is now the head man in College Station, in Mike Elko. In that game, Joe, I think is even more fascinating in this 12-team era of the college football playoff because it is right now a virtual pick'em. Minus 111 in favor of A&M, minus 108. 3 cents of distinction on the money line, where in years past, the loser of the game, slim to none in terms of their margin of error to get to the college football playoff. This year, it is just a celebration of a great non-conference battle that will show us what Notre Dame is capable of this year.
It will, and think about the matchup. You have Mike Elko, a defensive mastermind, mastermind that took down Cade Klubnik with 6 months of preparation, and he knows Riley Leonard very well. So if he's going to devise a game plan to really limit Riley Leonard in week number 1, he has 6 months to do it. I think that's why you're seeing the one pick'em type of spread play out right now in terms of the offseason. But I still give the edge to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They legitimately have the quarterback advantage in almost every ball game, and that includes Miller Moss and USC and DJU and Florida State. They play both Navy and Army on the schedule. There is no reason for this team not to win 10 football games. Marcus Freeman, 10 wins last year, but you lose to Louisville on primetime. You get blown out, right? You struggle with Duke. They had to pull that ball game out in the last minute of the in terms of the regulation. You cannot have lapses like that. So, again, it's the third year. He needs to step up. Pressure's on Notre Dame. I don't see any reason why they don't get over the 10.5.
On paper, outside of the game against Texas A&M, we'll see how USC looks at the end of the regular season. That's the regular season finale in the Coliseum in Los Angeles against the Trojans. Notre Dame's favored in 10, 11, maybe all 12 of their games. We'll see what that line ends up for the Week 1 opener against Texas A&M. And again, because there are 5 automatic berths to the college football playoff, there should be at least one seat at the table now for a non-power conference team in the group of 5. Now only 9 FBS conferences after the Pac-12 is no more. And Joe, 4 teams with the 4 shortest prices to reach the CFP from the group of 5 level. Liberty, plus 550. Memphis, 6-1 as well. Boise State, 6-1 the number, and Tulane 11-1 a little further back. But we start with Liberty, and we'll keep it moving around these group of 5 contenders for the CFP. Last year, the debate would have been furious for that final spot in the college football playoff between an unbeaten Liberty side, the champions of Conference USA, but not exactly the most difficult schedule, and an 11-2 AAC champ in SMU, who, of course, now is in the ACC with its only 2 losses in non-conference play against Oklahoma and TCU. That's a debate that we get to have this year throughout November and into early December. Liberty the best price, though, entering 2024 to reach the college football playoff.
Yeah, and Caden Salter comes back, 32 touchdowns. You're talking about an offense that produced 493 total yards. They went toe-to-toe with some of the best defenses in the country. They did get blown out in the bowl game against Oregon, but it doesn't matter. They can outscore a number of teams in regards to a conference championship. 32 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions for Salter. I think they're going to be right there with Seth Henigan in Memphis, 32 touchdowns as well. I give the inside edge to Ryan Silverfield and Memphis. I think they're a little bit more physical, but we'll see how it plays out.
Who was picked up where Mike Norvell left off for the Memphis Tigers. And, oh, by the way, we'll continue to look at what their odds are like for this college football season on the other side. Because Memphis, the favorites to win the AAC, and Boise State, the favorites to win the Mountain West for a second consecutive year, are teams that you should know and maybe bet on. The college football playoff conversation continues.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It is Canada. You know, Canada is one of those teams that's the darling of the tournament right now. They're still 9-1.
To win a tournament, or even to advance far into a tournament like this, you need a bit of good fortune. And it doesn't matter if you're getting the good fortune that Canada has, where they played 2 matches where they were up a man, or you had the good fortune of Argentina, who's one of the best teams in the world, who just got on the good side of the draw.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Watch out for USA and Canada in 4 years. Cricket's going to be a sport that's growing.
I made my first cricket bet last week or over the weekend. I was getting a team that was leading like 150 to 5 plus odds. I'm like, I'm up 150 points and I'm getting plus odds. Where do I sign? I love this cricket stuff. What are you kidding me?
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
The Group of 5 conversation. Who are the CFP contenders in the new 12-team format of the college football playoff? Liberty, the best price of a non-power conference team to reach the CFP at plus 550. Liberty is an odds-on favorite to win CUSA's title for a second consecutive year. By the way, to your point on Caden Salter, he was just over 100 yards shy of having 3,000 passing this year. He had more than $1,000 on the ground as well. He would have matched Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Johnny Manziel as the only other quarterbacks in FBS history to have 3K passing, 1K rushing in a single season. Oh, by the way, 3 of those other 4 quarterbacks won a Heisman Trophy, and Jalen Hurts finished runner-up. That is the promise of what Caden Salter brings back at the quarterback position for Jamie Chadwell at Liberty. Now we go to the favorites in the AAC. It's Memphis, competitive conference, although teams like SMU do move on. They were the conference champ last year, a perfect 9-0 run to that conference championship in American action. And the champions of the Mountain West, despite an up-and-down year under Andy Avalos, who was fired, Joe, after a 5-5 record midway through the year. They take over there in Boise. Why am I blanking on the head coach's name? Hit it with me. Boise State's head coach.
Gilbertson.
It'll come to me. I'll think about it. We're brain farting a little bit. It's been a long day, but we'll come to us in just a second. But they are the favorites once again, is Boise State, to win the Mountain West title.
Danielson.
Yes. Spencer Danielson. Correct. Who was promoted from the interim head coach to the permanent head coach as well for Boise State. Regardless, he led the Broncos to a Mountain West title last year. They're expected to do the same in the Mountain West this year.
And Malachi Nelson comes over for USC. Yeah. Taylon Green, that was the success of that offense, is now the starting quarterback at Arkansas with Sam Pittman. So it's an amazing transition and revolving door. And we saw it last year, 7-5 overall. Boise State got away from their offensive identity. They were able to throw it much more consistently at the end of the regular season. Defensively, they stepped up, did not step up in the bowl loss to Northwestern. But again, when you just see this play out, Ben, 9.5 is a huge number. I would go under that total in regards to that. Again, I think maybe Air Force can bounce back in a big way. There's some other contenders as well in terms of the Mount West. It's a good look, but again, it all hinges on Malachi Nelson. If he lives up to expectations, forget just winning the Mount West. Maybe they crack the party for the college football playoff. He might be a dark horse for the Heisman as well.
Ashton Genty, one of the best dual threat backs in all the country, what he can do on the ground for Boise and also through the air. Boise State last year, Mountain West champ, plus 135 to make it 2 in a row. Memphis, the favorites to win the AAC. Tulane, the 4th best price of Group of 5 teams to see the college football playoff. But Willie Fritz, no longer in New Orleans. It's John Sumrall, who was the head coach of a successful Troy football program the last few years. By the way, Memphis hasn't had a losing season in a decade, and what Ryan Silverfield has built at Memphis continues for the Tigers. They have won at least 8 games in 8 of the last 10 years, 10 wins a season ago. And the reason we have the Group of 5 conversation, and one of my favorite things about it, Joe, is these programs, these players, these head coaches are going to get the national attention all year long. It's not the, forgotten, okay, which Group of 5 team are we putting in the New Year's 6 when all is said and done after we select the 4? It's a conversation that continues with all 12 teams because of the 5 highest ranked conference champions earning an automatic berth to the college football playoff. And it's why betting Liberty at plus 550 or Memphis and or Boise State at 6-1 does make some sense. If you believe those teams can win their conferences and are able to attain that automatic berth, they just have to be ranked higher than teams that are like them, like a Liberty, like a Tulane, like a Memphis. It's worth a sprinkle just to be included in the dance that is the 12-team college football playoff.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, again, these are teams that are under the radar now, but as the regular season progresses, they start to peak at the end of the regular season. They have more value. So you buy low, sell high in regards to the college football playoff. I'll say this in terms of your point about Ryan Silverfield. You look at the games that they lost to last year. Missouri, in their house, they lost by 7. They went toe-to-toe with SMU, lost by 4. Every loss right now was by 10 or less. Tulane, 10 points, 31-21. They have a signal caller in Hennigan that could step up. Again, very physical. And that bowl win over Iowa State proved me something. Even though it was a home game for them, I mean, to put up and tack on 36 points, they averaged 39 points per game. Great value. Both of those teams, Liberty, Boise State, all 6-1 respectively. That's great value across the board.
And it should go as a reminder as well of the teams left behind from the Pac-12. Now tied forever, the Pac-2, Oregon State and Washington State. Jake Dickert remains as the head coach for Wazoo on the Palouse. Jonathan Smith left Corvallis. He's now in East Lansing as the head coach of Michigan State. But linebacker great for Oregon State and the DC the past few years under Smith. Trent Bray takes over as the head coach. Oregon State 17-1 to reach the college football playoff. Wazoo 38-1. What makes it incredibly difficult, they are not in line for an automatic berth as a conference champ because they don't technically belong to a conference. Each team will play 6 Mountain West foes, 3 home games against Mountain West teams, 3 road games against Mountain West teams as well in a scheduling alliance. But we will pour some out for the Beavs and the Cougs. Proud football programs, incredibly passionate fan bases, some of the greatest settings in all of college football, but just the dark side of realignment, Lisi.
It really is, and I think for both of those programs as well, 6-6, 7-5 is a great, first year out of the Pac-12. And, I credit Dickert as well for staying there and staying with his players, the players that he recruited in Pullman to wear it out. And, hey, let's see what the next 1 or 2 seasons after the Pac-12 is dissolved. Let's see where it takes us. Yeah. And I credit that. Jonathan Smith moved on to a bigger and better deal with Michigan State, Damian Martinez as well. But again, I still think when you look at the success of both teams, Goldberson is there for Oregon State. They have more returning starters than Wazoo. So I think Oregon State potentially could be a 7-win football team.
Both teams with a win total of 7.5, and the under has the juice slightly for the Cougs and the Beavs. The roster's kind of gutted as well. Cam Ward leaves Washington State. He's now the signal caller at Miami. But everybody is going to be pulling for those on the Palouse and in Corvallis this upcoming college football season. Before we go, here on our CFT Summer Special, what kind of show would this be without a best bet for the 2024 college football season? Next.
One of the many exciting things about joining Live was being able to come here and play in front of a Spanish crowd, especially on a level of event and level of competition that I hadn't really yet enjoyed, right? I've been able to play events in Spain.
Here in the beautiful Valderrama, which some say is the European Augusta. It's so special. There's so much history here. There's so much Spanish history here.
Well, it has so much history behind. It's only a 50 years old club, but so much has happened through the years. I mean, we had the Ryder Cup, we had World Gold Championships, and now we have Live.
It's very exciting, and really, if there was ever a place to get my first win, I feel like this would be the perfect week.
This wind at this golf course is so difficult that it's equally stressful no matter when or where you're playing it. But it was fun. It's always fun to be back home and be with the home crowd. It's always a joy to have this many people supporting me all day. It's so much fun.
What the heck course were you playing today?
I don't know.
It's brutal out there.
It is brutal. I don't know. It was. I just made everything I looked at, Jerry. You have those days. I suppose this is one of those days for me, so I relish it. I really enjoyed it. Every time I stood over a putt, just felt like I could make it, and you don't get days like that too often, or certainly I don't. So yeah, I relished in it, and I managed to hit a lot of good shots as well. So it was a special day.
Welcome back for one final segment of College Football Today's Summer Special here on SportsGrid. He is the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. And it goes without saying that Kevin Walsh will be here with us throughout the entirety of the 2024 college football campaign. It's the summer. We've got to take some time off. We've got to focus on other things. But before we go, before summer school is out to get you set for 2024, it is time now for our favorite of all the wagers that we will lay here in the offseason before the year gets started. It's time for a 2024 college football campaign best bet. Lisi guy, age before beauty, my friend. You get to go first here with your best bet for the 2024
Well, you said it so eloquently that, you know, you got to recharge the batteries, and you and K-Dubs are family, and so is Brian Kelly. I might be called a homer on the show because I love LSU, but I really believe the LSU Tigers can get over the 9.5 at plus 106 this year. Garrett Nussmeier takes over. The way he's built the offense and defensive lines in terms of recruiting, I think year number 3 is the year that they break out. Plus 106. They're also plus 125 to make the college football playoff. And think about this. The mad scientist, Nick Saban, who is 34-4 against SEC opponents over the past couple of seasons, 9-0 last year and won those games by 12 points per game. He's gone, baby. LSU goes over the total and cracks the college football playoff.
It's a really good point as well. And that's really what you can do in these summer months, in the off season. You can start to correlate wagers that make sense altogether. If, like Joe, you believe the Bayou Bengals are going over 9.5 wins, that's double digits. That's a 10-2 regular season record at bare minimum. I would be shocked, stunned, and frankly appalled if a 10-2 LSU team in this year's rendition of the SEC in the realigned conference did not make the college football playoff. So over with some slight plus money and then a plus 125 price to get to the college football playoff. It all depends on the defense in Baton Rouge. What can Blake Baker do, the new DC, hired away from Missouri, from one group of Tigers to another? Harold Perkins, an elite talent. How do they solidify the middle of that defensive line and that front? That is my question for the Bayou Bengals this year. My best bet, another win total. But in the Big 12, it's Iowa State. Over 7.5 wins for the Cyclones. When you look at this team, 85% of the production from a season ago returns to Ames. That is the most nationally in all of college football, including their quarterback, Rocco Becht, who gained invaluable experience a year ago. The entirety of the starting offensive line. His 2 top targets as well on the offensive side of the football. And you know Matt Campbell is going to have that Cyclones defense reared and ready to go for this season. 6 losses a year ago, by the way, for Iowa State. 4 by 10 points or less. Competitive for the Cyclones. I would expect some of those competitive losses to now go their way. Over 7.5. And Lisi, in a conference we both are fascinated by in the Big 12, with so many teams right around those numbers, 8 teams with a 12-1 price or better to win the Big 12 championship this year, and all 8 of those teams with a win total of 7.5 or better. If I think Iowa State can go over 7.5, you know I'm going to sprinkle on the Clones price to win the Big 12, at least being one of those 2 teams to square off in the conference title game. game.
And who knows? Maybe they could be the TCU of a couple years ago and crack the college football playoff. The negative turns into a positive for Matt Campbell. You talk about the Hunter Decker situation. It really set up Rocco Becht in that offense for year number 2. 18 starters, like you mentioned, coming back. They can run it. They can throw it. And if that defense takes the next step in the Big 12, we know how good of a coach Matt Campbell is. He was on the hot seat. I put him on the hot seat a couple of seasons ago. Now he potentially can win the Big 12.
Which is crazy to say. It's a realigned conference. All of the power conferences look a little bit different in some of those group of 5 schools that have seen teams defect, like SMU, from the AAC to the ACC, look different as well. Many changing names, many changing faces, many different places for the 2024 college football season. There's a lot to know. I hope this CFT Summer Special got you at least up to speed, because there will be plenty of more information to give out as the college football season gets underway. Saturday, August 24th, it is week 0 of the campaign, and then everything from there on out, Lisa Guy, truly begins.
I'm chomping at the bit, baby. I can't wait. Let's kick it off. Toe meets leather, August 24th, baby.
Toe meets leather, and it's not a soccer ball despite being across the pond. The Dublin debut in Ireland between Georgia Tech and Florida State. Part of a smaller slate, week 0, but then we fully get underway for week 1 just about 4 days later. That's when we'll talk to you. He's Joe Lisi. I'm Ben Stevens. Thanks for tuning in to our College Football Today Summer Special. We'll talk when the season starts.